All right, we've got these objects on the form. We did that in the last recording. We talked about how to select multiple objects. Now let's talk about how we can align them. Visual Studio many editions ago, and I've deselected everything. I just clicked on the form. Visual Studio many editions ago has made aligning your objects a little bit easier. I can drag them around, but notice as I drag, blue and sometimes purple lines show up. These are alignment lines. My left edges of the labels are now aligned. The bottoms of the labels are now aligned. Right, so I can move these and align them like that, and that's normally what I do. Occasionally, I'm going to make kind of a stair-step effect here. Occasionally, I've got lots of objects on my form, and I want to align them very quickly. I'm going to select them all. And I'm going to make sure that label 1, the one I want everybody to line up on, is the master. So I selected them all by dragging a box over them. Then I clicked on label 1 to make it the master. Now I can go to Format, Align, and choose left, center, right, top, bottom, middle, etc. So I'm going to do lefts. And it aligns them up very quickly, and I don't have to manually do it. But most of the time I align stuff using those alignment lines. The other thing that's nice under Format, under the Format menus, there's Make the Same Size. Now, during the break, Val was asking me, how do we size these labels? That's coming, hang on. But if I have 6 buttons and I want to make them all the same size, I can use that. That comes in handy. I can also change the horizontal, and in this case, the vertical spacing, and say, equally space them up and down. What Visual Studio will do here is leave the top one where it is, leave the bottom one where it is, and space everybody else in between. So you can do this with 5, 6, 10 objects, and that makes your form very professional looking. I can make it equal, and now they're all nice and equally spaced. Or you can eyeball it. Most of the evaluation sheets that I have I have one box that says form looks professional. If you've got a couple text boxes that are really close together and then the next ones are a little bit further apart and the next one's close together and further apart, I don't consider that very professional. If you eyeball it and the space looks pretty close, I'll be okay. But if they're really wacky, then I'll probably take a point or so, or half a point, excuse me. Questions about alignment? Okay, well then I promised it to you. There it is. Checkpoint on page 62 are due Friday. I'm guessing that's not the end of it. There might be more to this ticket yet, but there is now a ticket, and I will post it after class, to do the checkpoints on page 62, and that's a 1-point ticket. It might become a 2-point ticket if we get far enough here, and my guess is we will. So page 62, and this is always in my notes. They're highlighted yellow on the website. In your notes, the printed notes, they're probably looking kind of light gray, right, Joni? They look gray in the notes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you should be able to find them. But I'll also post the ticket on the ticket thing on the website. All right, let's talk about labels. Let's get rid of these 3 labels because I think we don't need them all. So I'll highlight all 3 of them, just drag a box around and press the delete key, and they're gone. And now that we got rid of all of them, let's put one back. I'm just going to double click and park it over here. And I definitely don't want it to be green, so this is good practice. So I'm going to change its background color to web transparent. Val wanted to make that label a little bigger. One way to make the label bigger is to change its font size, obviously, because it'll get bigger. The labels right now are set to auto size. I have my label selected. One of its properties is the auto size property, and it's set to true. So as you type more text in that label, when you change its text, the label will grow. If you take text out, it'll shrink. The label takes up only as much room as it needs to on the form. In many cases, that's perfect. Just what we need. Sometimes you do want that label to have extra space on it around the characters. So you just set this to false. Now here's a power tip. You could click on this and then click the arrow and choose false, but this is called a Boolean. This is a new term for you probably. Boolean property. That's B-O-O-L-E-A-N. A Boolean property is a true-false property. Right, and we're going to hear the word Boolean again in Unit 4. So Boolean just means true, false. If this is a Boolean property, to change it from true to false, from false to true, you simply double click the property name. Now it's false. Now it's true. Now it's false. Leave it false, and notice now my label has handles. Back to my notes real quick. What are labels for? A couple of reasons. Okay. First, to describe things, like the one we're doing right now will be the title for our form. We already have a title bar. Yeah, but we're going to put a title on the form. Later on, we're going to be creating forms with text boxes and radio buttons and list boxes and combo boxes. And how does the user know what to type in those? You put labels on them. So labels are used to describe other objects on the form. And finally, later in Unit 4, labels will be used to show the results of your programs. We're going to write a gas mileage program that figures out how many miles per gallon you get, or something like that. I forget what it does. I have to go look. Well, when I calculate the miles per gallon, I want to display that to the user. And when I do, I don't want the user to be able to mess with it and type in that box, like a text box. So I show it in a label instead. So labels do two purposes. They describe things, or they just show the outputs of your program so that the user can't manipulate them. We just saw the auto size property. Okay. When you turn that off, labels no longer auto size. So according to my little instructions over here, and that's what the red stuff is for. Okay. According to my little instructions here, I'm supposed to put this program was written by : in that label. If I want to change what appears in the label, what do you think I change? What did we change on the form to change what appears at the top? The text property. That's the one thing I've found about Visual Studio over the years. It's become more and more consistent. When I first learned Visual Studio, for text boxes you used text. For labels you used caption, and it was all you had to remember. Everything's text now. You want to change the text that appears on your form, change the text property. Another power tip. You could highlight this because you want to remove it, but if you select the text property and just start typing, it'll replace what's there. And what did I want to say? This program was written by, this program was written by. Yep. So click, this program was written by, : We'll finish the rest of that with your name a little bit later. When you press enter, it puts it in there, but notice it chopped it off, so now I need to make my label a little wider so that everything fits in there. So if you're not auto-sizing, you have to make sure that everything shows. Does spelling matter? Absolutely. If it's going to show on the form, spelling matters. Because the user's going to see it, and users just figure you wrote this and you're from India or something if things are misspelled, so we don't want that. Behind the scenes, other programmers are going to look at it, so spelling is important. Got resumes this weekend from my second-year students who are creating websites. And these spelling errors on resumes, that's a bad idea. All right, what else can we do with labels? We can change the font, so let's go up. We've done this before, but you can see that it's very consistent. Here's the font. If I want to make this a little bigger and change the font, here's your chance to, oh, you're going to take a while on that? There we go. Pick something interesting but not too elaborate because somebody's got to read it. So I think I'll use my impact font here, and regular looks pretty good. I'm going to make it size 16, just experiment. Okay, and now it's definitely bigger, and it was written by. One thing to notice with labels is if it doesn't fit horizontally, if you make the label big enough depth-wise, it will wrap. That's automatic. Only wraps if it needs to. I don't want it to go to the bottom. While you're at it, change the for color. That's the property that changes the color of the text. And because my label is selected, I'm only changing the font and the color of this label. Change it to whatever you want. I'm going with a dark blue. Fit with my cloud scheme here. Everybody fairly satisfied with yours? Next thing we're going to talk about briefly is the text align property. By default, the text appears in the top left of your label. If your label is auto-sized, this property has no effect whatsoever. Right. But if you wish, you can use this little grid to say, I want the text to be centered up and down and left and right inside my label. And now that looks pretty good. And what's nice about this is you can ensure that this thing is now centered on the screen if I want to. Notice when I drag this, a little gray, I don't know if you can see it up on the screen, see the little gray mark on the left side of my box? That's the Microsoft approved distance, excuse me, the Microsoft approved distance from the edge of the screen. You don't have to listen to that if you don't want to, but here, okay, that's a good start, and I'm going to stretch it. And notice there's another one on the right-hand side now, so I'm the Microsoft approved distance from the edge of the screen, and that basically centers that in the center of the screen. It's a little weird because this one doesn't look centered. This is a Windows 8 thing, by the way, that centers the title in the title bar instead of left aligning it. If there's a way around that, it's probably in Windows 8, because that looks kind of goofy with this aligned. Alan?
I don't have text aligned.
You don't have, do you have your label selected? Probably not. Didn't even have to get up. Questions? Okay, so that's one way to center it. There's lots of ways to make sure that this object is centered in the form. We'll talk about other ways later on. What other properties we got here? Font and font color. Back color we already changed, made it transparent, right? You can change it to a color. You can actually change it. I believe there's a background image for this label. And I lied, there is not. So in some objects I can change the background image of a form, obviously, but I can't do it for my label. But I can change the color, so I could make that yellow, make it stand out if I wanted to. Back color, border style. My label right now has no border. If I want to put a box around it, I can change its border style property. There's only a couple of choices. You get fixed single, which just draws a box around it, or you get 3D, which makes it look like it's sunk in. Try each one. You have to click off of it to kind of see the effect, then click back on it again to change it. And that kind of gives it a sunk in effect, and that's it. Where do I change the border color? As far as I know, you can't do it. Label borders, you can put them on, but you cannot change the border color. If you want a border around that that's a different color, you have to put a box around it. There's a graphical box over here. That you can change, but it's not attached to the label. Now you got two objects, and it's just, I don't mess with them too much. I do use, I'll tell you, I'm going to remove my border now. I will tell you that when we get to Unit 4, your programs start having outputs. Remember my miles per gallon? Our standard said your output labels have a single border around them to show that this is an output. It's a visual clue that your user gets used to that this label is for output purposes. That's our standard. So you'll have to follow that later, but that's how you add a border to it. What else we got here? Border style, visible. This is something we'll change later. You can actually say that this label, visible, is false. It's a Boolean property. And it disappeared. Not really. It would be really annoying if it disappeared in design mode, because then how do you find it? Right? But when you run, that label is invisible. What's the point of that? Later on we write code. They click the magic button, it comes back again. They click the magic button, it hides again. I will show you how to write code to do that a little bit later. For right now, please put it back to visible, and don't do that to your form. I think there's a visible property on your form, and you run it, and nothing happens, but your program still says it's running. I run my program, but I can't find, oh, that's another one. I don't have to leave my chair. I know what you did. Visible true on my label. Don't do that to your form. It is possible, I believe. No, they took it away. When your program's running, you can do that, though. I'm glad they took it away. Why would you want to run something and have it be invisible when it starts?
There's a virus.
Maybe.
There's a transparency.
Yeah, well, the transparency works, but it leaves certain pieces on your form. Okay. So I'm glad they took that away because that was embarrassing for everybody. Okay, still selecting my label. I'm looking at other things I can do to labels. Okay, image. What? You can put an image on your label. I don't do this very often, but let's just try it. Okay. I'm going to select my label, and I'm going to go to my image property. And once again, it's going to say, do you want it embedded, local, or do you want it a resource file? We always want them local. Import. It's still on my folder, and so now I could put my MSTC logo on my image or on my label. That's kind of ugly, but the good news is they're attached, right? So if you do that, if you want images and labels that are attached that always move together, you can put the image in there. But notice there's an image alignment. Initially it's middle center. I can say make it middle left, and now my MSTC logo is over there. So this is kind of like a background image, but not quite. And it will stay there, and as I resize my label, I can put the text on top or resize it so the text is just right. And again, whatever you want to do. Again, I don't do that very often, but it is something you can do. I've had people try to confuse me. They create labels, put images in, and they take the text out and say, see, it's PictureBox. No, it's not. It's a label with a picture in it. That's different. And it's not the appropriate use of that. There's no reason to have a label with a picture in it with no text. That's called a PictureBox. Use the PictureBox for its right purposes. Questions about that? Okay, let's see what my instructions say here. Put that in there, same background color, change the font, add another label and put your name in it, place it underneath that one. Okay, so I'm going to add another label. I'm just going to, oh, wait a minute. Let's cheat. A little later in my notes, I skipped it and came back. What if I want the font for the label to be basically the same as this, the same font, the same color? I want the label to not be auto-sized, and maybe I even want the Midstate logo on it. Here's a power tip. It's in my notes. Select that label. And let me try this first before I have you do it. I'm going to hold the Shift key down and drag that, and it's moving. That's what I thought. I'm going to hold the Control key down and move it. It's not doing anything. We're on a Mac. Normally, if you hold a Control key down and drag that on a Windows machine, it will copy it. Here, I think we're going to have to Control-Option drag it, and it's still not working. How annoying is that? So I got one more option. Ha-ha! That was Control-Command drag. How annoying is that? Why can't they make them the same? When I'm selecting them, it's Control-Option, and it also always pops up the Windows. That's, by the way, in a Mac, how you get the Windows key. You press Command. And when you have to merge it with the Control key, it always pops up the Windows menu. Just close it and cuss at the Mac and move on your way. Can't wait till you get, oh, we're going to start shifting onto your laptops here real soon. Because the keyboard is a little funky. You get used to it. Now I have an exact duplicate. I can change the text and say Volker Gall. You put your own name in there. And you know what? I really don't want the image. So how do I get rid of the image? Right-click, reset. I want my name to be bigger. Fine, go change it. But at least it's transparent. It's the same font. It's already blue. You don't have to repeat that over and over and over again. That can come in very handy, particularly when you're creating labels on a form. Let's say I have a form that I want somebody to fill out. It's got all kinds of things they got to fill out. I want all those labels to be transparent and auto-sized, but transparent, maybe a certain font. Create one, and then Control-Drag, change it. Control-Drag, change it. Control-Drag, change it. And then you don't have to change the font. You don't have to change the auto-size. You don't have to change transparency over and over and over again. Control-Drag allows you to make an exact duplicate of that object, and then you can customize the duplicate if you wish. Okay, so we did that. We added the name, place it below the title. Add another label with the course name by copying the first label. That's kind of what we just did. I don't think we need a course name, so we'll skip it. Add the logo. We've already done that. Add a border to one of them. Nah, we saw how to do that, so I'm not going to put it up there. Here's the tips. If you need many objects that have the same appearance, create one. And then copy it either to the clipboard. That's another thing we could do. So let's put the MSTC one in here. Let's copy this again. But this time use the clipboard. In the Mac virtual machines, Control C, Control X, Control V all work. If they didn't teach you those shortcut keys in Microsoft Office, I hope they get around to them. If you look on your keyboard, Z, X, C, and V. Undo, cut, copy, paste. Again, worn out on my keyboard. You can right-click and copy. I'm going to make sure my label is selected, Control C. The thing about the Microsoft clipboard, in most cases you get no feedback telling you that there's something on the clipboard, that worked. It just happens. Then I'm going to click my form and Control V for paste, and now I have a new one that I can move around, and I'm going to change the text of that one to Mid-State Technical College. Really helps if you can spell technical right. And I'm going to change the color of that one to maroon because that's the Mid-State colors. That's just me. Yuck. And I'm going to resize that one so that the text is right next to the logo, and then I have to eyeball the centering. Now, I wonder, I'm curious, what would happen if I auto-size this now? It has an image in it. Auto-size true. Ew. Not too good. Control Z. That's better. So now you can see where you can start customizing these things. I'm not making the assignment yet. All right, I get this question a couple of times. When is worksheet 2 due? When is the welcome screen due? When is the states program due? They're not yet. I don't know yet. I have to finish the lesson. Once I finish my lecture, we'll figure that out. But if you wish to get started, you've got a lot of skills now that you can apply to your welcome screen, which is just going to be a welcome to Joni's program, and put all your favorite stuff on there. I'm sure Miguel's is going to have baby pictures all over the place, whatever you want it to be. Completely customize it, have some fun. That's one of the things I like about Visual Studio, is you get to do some of that stuff. We haven't gotten to the coding yet, but you could start doing the screen layout. Don't have to wait for me to assign it. You can get started. Okay? If you need objects same size, we just talked about that. We can copy them to the clipboard. We just did that. And then you can paste, 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 because remember, once something is on the clipboard, it stays there until you replace it. So if I paste again, you don't have to follow. If I paste again, I get 3 more of these, many as I want. That's handy. How do I get rid of those? Dragging, delete. Okay, so the clipboard is handy because anything you put on the clipboard, you can paste it as many times as you want. Control dragging, you can still, remember on the Mac, it's control command dragging. You can drag it as many times as you want and make many copies of it. So that's a power tip. Save you a little bit of time. It gets annoying changing the background transparency over and over and over again. Just do it once, then copy the object. Here's the drag, the control key. I forgot to put in here. I should put it in there, that you need to control command drag on the Mac. And finally, remember, we could also create 5 labels, select them all, and then set the font and the transparency to all of them at the same time. So there's lots of different ways. You shouldn't be setting the same property over and over and over again, unless you want to practice. As promised, checkpoints on page 91 have now been added to your ticket, so it's now a 2-point ticket. What you need to do for me before Friday, before class, had your grace period with the last ticket. All right, no more grace periods. These tickets need to be submitted to me before class on Friday. All I need is the answers. You can type them in a Word document, type them in Notepad, or just open a brand new email message sent to me and type your answers in there if you wish. Save it if you want as a draft and send it to me when it's done. All I need is the answers. If you are one of those that was taught in high school, you always copy the question and you insist on typing the question, then do it. That's fine. But all I really need is the answers. If it looks like you did a halfway decent job, you made a good effort at getting the right answers out of the book, they're all in there, I'll give you your points. If you look like you threw it together at 10 minutes to 10 on Friday, and you got most of the answers or half the answers wrong, then I will dock you points as I see fit. Questions on the ticket? Yeah.
That one's due Friday as well?
It's one ticket, yeah.
Oh,
okay. It's a 2-point ticket. So please send them together. Don't send me half and half. It's all more complicated. Normally what I will do is try to give you the right answers if you got them wrong and send it back to you, and the ticket someplace will tell you how many points you got. In most cases, you'll get your 2 points. Page 23 of 28 or 38, making progress. Okay, some more fun stuff because Miguel wants to know how to do this. How do I add a picture box to my form? Same way, you just find the picture box control. This is how we add pictures that float. Remember, we had a picture on the background, but that's pretty limited. It can be tiled or it can be stretched or any of those other things. But if you want a picture there where you position it on the screen, where you want multiple pictures, use a picture box. I'm going to click and drag just to do something a little different. Notice the icon changed. It's got a little picture icon attached to the mouse. And there's my picture box. It also has the background of the form color. If I'm getting sick of that, I should probably change the background of my form to some other color, like light gray or black, because my form is covered up anyway, so I can make it whatever I want. For pictures, what can we do to them? We can obviously size them and move them around. The picture box control is the first one that comes up with, I forget what they call that little guy there, the task list button. Many editions of Visual Studio ago, they added this little task list button that has the most commonly changed properties of this object in a convenient, my quotation marks in italicized, convenient location. It's right there on the object. You just dragged it, so why not just click here so that you can choose an image or change its size mode. These are the exact same properties as over here. Exact same properties. So it's just a little shortcut. So let's start with choose image. What am I going to do here? Local, always. Import, and let's bring in the coffee cup. Notice that's a PNG file. I think I've changed most of mine to PNGs. The sunset are still JPEGs. PNG is the latest, most efficient image format that's web portable. It's called Portable Net Graphics. It's also compatible with just about all drawing programs today. What I mean by most capable is about the only thing you can't do to a PNG image is animate it. Only GIF files can be animated. That's the flag down here. GIF is the GIF files. Those can be animated. They're the only ones. But PNGs do a very nice job of resizing without pixelating too much. They will a little bit. If you start with a big picture and shrink it, it'll look good. If you start with a small picture and enlarge it, it starts to lose its resolution. PNGs can also have a transparent background. JPEG files, the other common image file, cannot have a transparent background. That's its flaw. It's very good at resizing. GIFs are kind of rough at resizing, but they can be transparent. PNGs are kind of the combination of everything except the animation thing. So I'm going to bring in the coffee cup. And there it is, and now I got my, that's obviously a transparent background, right, on that image because my green is showing through the handle. So that image itself has got a transparent background. So I think now what do I want to do? I can change the size mode either by clicking this little arrow here, right, or I can go over here and look for size mode. If you don't remember, I forget that little arrow. It's been 5 years. It's been there at least that long. I always forget it's there. I'm so used to coming over here to get my properties that I don't even look for those things. It's not going to make me a whole lot more efficient. I think that's just one of the things they added to Visual Studio one year because they had nothing better to do. Here's my size mode. We've seen these before, right? Normal, stretch, auto size, center, and zoom. Normal means it puts it in the upper left-hand corner. If I stretch this box now, my mouse go. If I stretch the box, the coffee cup stays in the upper left. If I shrink it, I get a cropped version of my coffee cup. And know if I shrink it from this size, it doesn't shrink, it doesn't crop from the other side. It stays in the upper left. Stretch. Now I've got a soup mug. Occasionally that comes in handy, but it's pretty rare. Auto size, just like a label, now I only have one handle. It matches the size of the image exactly. Which is not bad. Center. As I stretch my box, the image stays in the center. If I had a background of some kind, then that might be effective. And finally, zoom, which makes the cup as big as it can be to fit the height and the width without distorting it. Right, that's kind of my favorite if I'm going to resize. Now, let's talk about it now. Having said that, if I know Miguel, he's at home with a Canon EOS super high resolution 16 megapixel camera snapping away pictures of that new baby. So it looks good on his desktop. If you take that 16 megapixel picture and put it in here in this little box and you set the zoom, it'll shrink it down, it'll look good, and it'll be 16 megabytes in size. Just that one picture. And then when you try to zip your program and send it to me, you won't be able to attach it to an email because it's too big because of that one picture that you shrunk down to this size anyways, but normal size is poster size, right? So, before you put your images into your Visual Studio project, size them appropriately using a drawing program. What drawing program? That's up to you. I mean, if you're an expert on Adobe Photoshop, use Photoshop. If you're a PaintShop Pro is out, there's all kinds of drawing programs, right? If you need a free one, remember my website gives you a suggestion. Under handouts, there's image manipulation. I use a program called Paint.net. It's free, that's why I use it. It is not Mac compatible, unfortunately. I don't think there's a Paint.net. Notice the .net, that means it was written in .net, so I don't think there's a Mac version of this because .net programs don't work for Macs. But it's free for Windows users. Here's a little video that I created a couple years ago to do some common things like take an image, resize it, save it with a new name, shrunk down so that it fits nicely into your Visual Studio program. Do yourself a favor if you take every one of your images, put it into Paint.net or your favorite drawing program, find out how big it is. Because if it's monster size, you want to shrink it down before you put it into Visual Studio. When you resize it in Visual Studio, it does not shrink that image. It just makes it smaller view. The size of it on disk is still the same. So get used to that. So there's my coffee cup, all of its different levels. I think I'm going to auto size, and here's another piece of advice. Use auto size. If your image is his 16 megapixel picture of the baby, what's the baby's name? Baby's name? Your daughter's name? Kyra. Okay. If your picture is of Kyra and you auto size it and all you get to see is her little lock of hair in the upper left-hand corner of the picture, it's too big, go fix it. Use the drawing program. No, Paint.net does not I don't think it has a feature in there for changing images. Maybe it does, I haven't found it. If you auto size it and it's way too big, it's way too big. My coffee cup fits nicely. That's the size that I want. If you're tweaking it a little bit, that's fine. But it's those big, huge monster pictures that cause problems later. And I encourage you to use them, and I also encourage you to learn how to resize them so that you can put them in the program and email them to me. He's got to resize those pictures anyway so he can email them to his family because you can't attach those 16 megapixel pictures. Okay, questions on that? That's a good tip. Just realized it. Auto size it. See what it looks like. If it's way too big, don't use it or shrink it. Back to my notes. Okay, pictures, occasionally you're going to want to do things with them. We haven't named any of these objects. We haven't named any of them yet. As we need to, we will name them when we write code, but some things I can almost guarantee you're going to need to change. You're going to change them in code. Pictures, probably. So let's give it a name first. Its initial name is PictureBox1. That's pretty lame. At least I think so. So I have 6 of them. How can I tell them apart if they're just numbered? So I'm going to change the name. And again, if you click on the property, you don't have to erase it. I use a prefix of pic, P-I-C. You can use PBX, PictureBox, if you wish. Just be consistent. And then a picture of what? Coffee cup. This is Camelback notation. Starts with a lowercase prefix, and then every word thereafter is capitalized. Makes it easier to read. You cannot put spaces in your object names. It's not allowed in any language. Right? So we have to have some way to make these easier to read. Camelback notation is, I'm going to say, worldwide standard now. The new Swift language just came out in iOS, and they now have upper Camelback and lower Camelback, which is stupid. But what that means, this is lower Camelback. You can also have upper Camelback where the first letter is capitalized. Right. They gave it a new name because they're Apple and they can do those things. But they still basically talk about camel case or Camelback notation. Right. This is pretty much a standard. And it is definitely our standard that when you name your objects, you name them with a prefix, Camelback notation. We didn't name the labels. I'm going to wait on those because I don't know which ones I'm going to manipulate in code. If I'm going to manipulate them in code, then I have to go back and give them a good name. Or I can go change it now and change it anyway. So let's do this one. Pick your name. LBL name. Done. Doesn't have to be the big long name. Doesn't have to be LBL Vokergall. What if I change it? I could call it LBL author or LBL programmer or whatever you want to call it, as long as it makes some sense. Press enter, that'll lock it in, and notice the properties now change. This one's probably label 3, that one's label 1. Okay. Those labels are fine if you never refer to them in code. But when we start writing code, if you're referring to a label, you better not be typing label 1, label 3, label 16, whatever it is. No. Give it a good name and then refer to it in code. Bet I can change the transparency of my coffee cup. I'm selecting it. So that's the back color. Going to make it web transparent. Awesome. We know how to size it. We set its auto size. That's its size mode here. Notice that for a label, it's not auto size. We're a little inconsistent here. For a label, it's auto size. For a picture, it's size mode because there's so many different size modes. Notice for my picture, I can give it a background image. So if I wanted to put waves behind my coffee cup, I could do that. If I want to put my face behind that coffee cup, I could do that. Right. And have a picture on top of a picture. The background image, once again, you will not be able to manipulate it much except to center it or stretch it or tile it or whatever it is you want to do. I'm not going to do that here. Size mode we just talked about. Tip, resize the image before inserting it. That tip needs to be tweaked. Set it to auto size, and if it's too big, then resize it. Because your program, you're going to want to send me your projects, and when the pictures are too big, you won't be able to. And you know when that's going to happen. The program's due at midnight, and 11:15 or 11:45, you're going to go, all right, I'm done. Zip it, try to send it to me, it won't go. Or worse yet, it'll go, and then 15 minutes later, you'll get an email back saying, failed. You go, it was due at midnight. What do you mean failed? It's too big. Another lesson there is give yourself a little time, just in case. Brought in the cup, VB cup. Still got a VB in here. My notes are now 3 years old. I still got VB stuck in my notes. Visual Basic. We did the stretch, picture box, experiment with the size, visible. We talked about visible property on the labels, right? We can hide them. You can hide pictures. What else? Image, local resource we talked about. You use animated GIFs. Let's prove that. Let's add another picture box. Here's my picture box, and I'm going to park it up here in the upper right-hand corner, and I'm going to first make it transparent right away. Then I'm going to go get its image. I'm going to go get the flag that waves. Did we do that in this class? I don't think so. The flag, the GIF file for the USA flag is animated, so it'll actually move. Click. You can see it moving in the preview here. When it puts it on your form, thank God it doesn't move here, because that would be really annoying when I'm in design mode to have that thing moving all the time. I'm now going to set its size mode to auto size because it looks like it's pretty good. Auto size, there we go, and park it in the Microsoft approved distance from the edges of the form. One student, in one of the other classes we got this far, one student made that the background image. Background images, some of you are laughing, go, oh, not the background image of my form, it would tile and then move, right? No, it'll make it the background image, but it won't move. Thank goodness. If you accidentally make it a background image, it won't move. Backgrounds cannot move, but if you run this now, that flag will be waving in the upper right-hand corner. Be very judicious with your use of animated objects on your form. If you got 5 or 6 of them, it just makes people crazy. Those of you who are PSO on Friday, I demonstrated a program that you're going to write a little later, and I have Snoopy dancing on the screen. That's just my welcome screen. He's only there for 5 seconds, and then he's gone. Okay. This is a welcome screen kind of thing. But, you know, I don't believe I have a requirement for you to put an animated image on your welcome screen, because most people would suggest that you leave them off anyways because it's just too distracting, particularly on forms that could sit there for quite a while. If you're interested in finding animated GIFs, there's all kinds of them. Just do animated GIF. There's a search in Google, and you'll be busy all day looking at cats and dogs and all kinds of weird things that are out there. Okay, other things we can do, we can change its top and its left and its height and its width. Now, we haven't talked about that because I don't use them very often. If I want to change the size of this cup, I can drag it if it weren't auto-sized. But there's also a size property. Notice it's 150 by 150. That's pixels. If I weren't in auto-size mode, I can change those and say, I want this to be exactly 100 by 100. Most of us don't know what a 100-pixel picture looks like. You're going to go in here and drag it till it looks good to you. You're probably not going to mess with the size. Unless you want 2 pictures to be exactly the same size, then you set one, so that's perfect, and you can change the height and the width of this one to match the other one exactly if that's what you want to do. Don't use that very often. There's also a location option here that is designated in X across and Y down the screen. Notice this image of my picture is located 205 pixels across and 141 pixels down from the top of the screen. If you want to, again, align things, probably don't need location because the blue lines, the purple lines will help you align things. But if you need to, you can tweak those, but it's not likely you'll need them. We can change the back color, the border style. Pictures can have borders. I don't like borders around my pictures because they're just those boring 3D or single border things, and I can't make them fancy. And there is a visible property. And one other thing, this occasionally comes in handy, is if you're using animated GIFs, you can make them stop by enabling or disabling the picture. So here's my flag. There's an enabled property. It's true. The enabled property is going to be used on lots of things like buttons and text boxes and things. And when the program's running, you might have a button that's disabled. Enabled equals false. So that the user can't click on it because they haven't met all the requirements. You got to fill all this stuff in. And when everything's filled in, then I turn on the button for you in code. And it's enabled. All objects have enabled properties. For an animated GIF, if enabled is false, it doesn't go. And so you could potentially put a little button, or maybe the picture itself. Maybe that's something we'll do next time because we're out of time. Next time we might write code to say when you click on the picture, it disables it so that if somebody's annoyed with the flag, they can turn it off. If they click it again, it re-enables it and it starts waving again. Maybe something we do next time. Okay, your project is automatic. Well, it hasn't been saved necessarily, so you might want to do a save all or run to save it, then close it, and we're done for the day, and we'll pick up with this on Friday.